Hello and welcome to Recovery Cave. My name's Christian, and in today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at some of the key ingredients that you'll need for recovery. And by ingredients, I mean certain attitudes, behaviours, and traits that I've identified over the years that consistently form the foundations for long lasting recovery. Some of them can be cultivated from scratch. Some of them may already exist within you, but need a bit of nurturing. And some of them will just click when you least expect them to. And there is some overlap between the different ingredients, but that's a positive thing because they complement each other. And it means that if you are working on one area, you might be inadvertently strengthening another area at the same time. And my original intention was to cover all of this in one video. But when I started the process, it soon became clear that that video would either be way too long or I would have to skim over what I believe to be important points. So I'm splitting it into two. And as I'm a big fan of logic, we're starting today with part one. So the first one is really wanting it. And I mean really wanting it. Now, that might sound horribly obvious, but it is worth giving some extra thought to because when things get really bad in addiction, there can be an awful lot of external pressures for you to stop. There can be family problems, health scares, you could lose your license, involvement with the courts, there can be issues at work, and social services involvement. And all of that pressure is very real. I experienced a lot of those myself, and it is horrendous to live through. And some of those events can be catalysts for recovery. They can be the thing that finally makes someone stop and take a serious look at their life. But external pressure on its own isn't normally enough to sustain long-term recovery. And I used to work in a specialist team alongside social care. And a lot of the individuals that I worked with had been under social care several times over the years. And the pattern had often become that they would manage to curtail their drinking or using just enough to convince social care to go away and their case would be closed. But then after a while, they would slip back into their old patterns of use and social care would end up becoming involved again. So, a big part of my role was to help people see that instead of just wanting the consequences of their drinking to go away, if they could get into a place where they really saw the benefits and really wanted recovery, then social care, the case would close, they would go away, and their life would become better overall, and social care would never come back. Over time, addiction can close your mind and shrink your world. And it's not something that you would have done consciously, it's something that addiction does in order to protect itself. But that closed mind of addiction creates certainty. So you can become completely convinced that your current thinking is correct, even when your life is falling apart around you. Defensiveness. That's reacting to concern, advice, or difficult conversations as attacks, rather than opportunities for reflection. Cynicism. Dismissing support, recovery, or other people's experiences before genuinely engaging with them. Resistance. pushing back against change, structure, or help because it feels uncomfortable, unfamiliar, or threatening. And I already know, so you might hear advice or insight intellectually, but remain closed to actually applying it honestly in your own life. And all of that stuff perpetuates addiction's existence. So in recovery, you need to try and replace those with their open-minded counterparts. And they are possibility, accepting that life, recovery, and even your own thinking could potentially become very different from what they are right now. Reflection, becoming willing to pause, look honestly at yourself, and consider difficult feedback without immediately becoming defensive. Willingness, trying new approaches, accepting help, and engaging with recovery even when it feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Letting go, gradually loosening old beliefs, behaviours, coping mechanisms, and identities that may no longer be helping you. And I'm listening, staying open to the idea that other people may have insight, experience, or perspectives that could genuinely help your recovery. When presented on screen like that, they can look like very big shifts, and that's because they are. But recovery is about working towards these things. It's not about perfecting them on day one. The closer you can get to absolute honesty, the easier your recovery will become. And I've already talked a little bit about honesty in previous videos, and I will talk about it more in future videos because it's very, very important. And absolute honesty is much more than just stop lying. It means completely recalibrating your concept of the word. And most of the hardest work here, as before, involves being honest with yourself. Because addiction doesn't just affect your behavior, it changes your perception of reality. Addiction can distort the way you interpret your life, your relationships, your choices, and your substance use. So see if you can recognize yourself in any of the following, either now or in the past. Minimizing the problem. So downplaying the seriousness of your substance use, behavior, or consequences. Saying things like, it's not that bad, or I only drink at weekends. Rationalizing the problem. That's creating explanations or justifications that make destructive behavior feel reasonable or necessary. Saying things like, well, I've had a stressful week, or anyone would drink in my situation. Blame. That's focusing entirely on other people or circumstances as the reason for your behavior, while avoiding personal responsibility. So saying things like, if you didn't behave like you do, I wouldn't have to drink, or everyone else is the real problem. And secrecy, hiding, editing, or managing information in order to protect your addiction or avoid difficult conversations. And that involves things like hiding bottles or lying about money. And all of those things feed addiction and starve recovery. And they're actually really stressful and quite difficult to maintain over time. And whereas getting truly honest with yourself can be a really big challenge at first, in the long run, it makes life way more simple because instead of having to remember 50 different lies, you just have to remember one truth. I'd like to start this section by making an important distinction. Humility does not mean humiliation. It does not equate to shame, and it does not signify weakness. Humility is the quality of being modest, respectful, and free from pride or arrogance. It means having an accurate, grounded view of your own importance and limitations. And for me, the biggest role of humility in recovery is recognizing and accepting that addiction is hugely powerful and needs to be treated with a lot of respect. If you were trapped in an enclosure with a lion, you wouldn't start taunting the lion. You wouldn't think about how you might tame it or how a fight might pan out. You'd give the lion respect because you'd know that the lion clearly has the upper hand and that the lion could easily kill you. And so could addiction. And in that situation, the best course of action would be to find a way out of the enclosure entirely and vow never to go back there ever again. And humility in recovery can be very helpful with relapse, which, although not inevitable, is very common. And when you've fallen off the horse, humility makes it easier to accept it, to dust yourself down, and to just get back on. It can also protect you from overconfidence and complacency. It lets you recognize your vulnerability without seeing it as a weakness. And humility was a pretty big factor for me in early recovery. I always thought I was pretty humble, but I realized when I got into recovery that one of my biggest barriers in addiction had been my pride and my arrogance, because I always thought I had all the answers, and I thought that I was too clever to be beaten by alcohol. And that was despite being proved wrong on both counts multiple times. And when I finally got over myself and became more willing to listen and learn and accept help from others, that was a really big step forward for me. And the final ingredient on our list today is acceptance. Now, sometimes people can think that acceptance means giving up or admitting defeat, but it doesn't. And it doesn't just mean accepting everything as it is either. In recovery, acceptance is best applied to anything that is relevant and is beyond your control. It means accepting certain truths exactly as they are without trying to change them or wish them away. And in early recovery, that can include things like your life as it is now, the consequences of your past, the uncertainty of your future, and the gradual, imperfect nature of recovery. And when you use acceptance in this way, it becomes empowering. It means that you can focus on the areas where you can affect change and stop wasting time trying to battle with absolute truths. The alternative to acceptance is generally avoidance. And avoidance is something that addiction thrives on. In addiction, we avoid our thoughts, feelings, emotions, we avoid uncertainty, we ultimately avoid ourselves. And all that avoidance actually makes our lives smaller and smaller. Acceptance is the willingness to start to turn towards those uncomfortable things instead of constantly trying to avoid them. And when you're willing to accept and embrace pain, you become more capable of embracing pleasure. When you're willing to accept and embrace sorrow, you become more capable of experiencing joy more fully. Being willing to embrace and experience life more honestly, both the horrible and the beautiful parts of it, is what makes our lives bigger, richer, and more fulfilling. So then, to summarize, recovery isn't created by one big decision or one big change that you can make overnight. It's made up of lots of smaller but important ingredients that all blend together. And the ingredients that we looked at today were really wanting a different life, like really wanting, becoming open-minded enough to learn and change, becoming honest enough to face reality clearly, developing the humility to respect the seriousness of addiction, and learning to accept the things that simply can't be wished away. Now, none of those things need to be perfect from day one. In fact, they probably won't be perfect at any point in your recovery, and that's fine. They just need to be good enough. And every time that you put some effort or some work into any of these areas, you're helping to strengthen the very foundations of your recovery. And future you will be very thankful that you did. And part 2 of this video will be coming next Friday, and I'll be taking a look at balance, patience, consistency, and connection. So if you don't want to miss that, subscribe to the channel. And if you've enjoyed this video or found it helpful, feel free to share it with anyone else who it might help. And if you could drop a like on the video, it'd really help the channel grow, and I would appreciate it massively. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.